Oh boy, it's time to sort things into categories by their quality. Everybody loves it when I do that. I'm getting a lot of requests for a music tier list, so here we are. I'm sure you're looking at this like, wait a minute, that's not all of the Splatoon music. You're right, this is all of the Splatoon music. So, we're going to use this list instead. This is all of the battle music. We can go and do other categories. I've got them broken down roughly into like single player, salmon run, lobby music, and there's one more that I'm forgetting off the top of my head. But, we could do this as more of like a 5-part list or something, and that breaks it down into a somewhat manageable amount of music to listen to, because I've got to like re-listen to all of these. Like, sure, I know some of them off the top of my head, but not all of them. Some of them I haven't listened to in a while. Some of them are Splatoon 1 music. I never listened to it in game, so I don't know it that well. So let's get this going. The I haven't actually pre-sorted these or anything, so I may end up changing these a little bit. But here are my thoughts for now. The top end is going to be massive value add to the game of Splatoon. Like, the top end songs here are, I wouldn't even call them good, I would call them important. That's how high up they are. These are the kinds of things that like sold the game, or are like key themes that keep coming back because they were just so good in the first place. Influential. And then some of my favorites will also go up there, and you can't stop me. So, the first one, great example of that, Splatack. This is the song that introduced us to Splatoon. So, yeah, it's going to go up there, and it's also a pretty great introduction. It shows how the style is going to be something that you haven't really seen before. It gets that sort of rock feel to it, but it's also very synth heavy. It's got a lot of like the weird Squid vocals. So like all of the key elements, I think, of the great Splatoon music are showcased there, and that's one of the big reasons why they chose it to represent the brand in the first place. Next up, we've got Ink or Sync. We're just going to go through in order here, so it's all going to be sorted by band. This is definitely not my favorite of Squid Squad's work. It's fine. Like, I don't hate it at all. There's that part where it gets into a little call and response. Like, that's kind of fun. But I'm not a huge fan of the one vocalist who comes in immediately after that. I think it was cool of them to attempt to get like low-pitched vocals in this like Inkling world to try and give themselves that variety, but it's just never really been a hit with me, and there's nothing about it that's like super engaging or anything. So, I'd probably put it here. It's not bad. It's just also nowhere near the caliber of some of the other stuff. Seascape, I'm gonna put slightly lower. I think Seascape is like one of those pieces that like doesn't have a lot that feels super unique about it. It feels a little bit repetitive at times. I kind of like what the rhythm section's doing in the background, but the melody just isn't a lot to speak of. So that's where that goes. Cracking Up, I also feel fairly meh about. It's kind of in between these here, but I like it a lot better than Seascape, so I'm probably going to put it up one more. Metallopod, this is a really controversial one. I really respect the attempt, and I think that like on paper, a lot of what they're trying to do is cool here. Because metal, there's a strong tradition of it in Japan, and if you're trying to build a game with a lot of diverse musical influences, then it's definitely something that's in question for, this is something we should talk about. I think the one thing that doesn't make it a great fit for this game is the way that the vocals have to be processed, because how in the world do you take these like underwater wibbly wobbly squishy voices and make them scream? How do you make them delve into the very depths of the human psyche and drag up the darkest parts? Like, I think that part hurts it a little bit, and so it sounds like a little over processed. It sounds a little bit like non-genuine, I guess. Um, so I think that part is a little strange, but just the pure novelty of it is incredible. Having it be this like Nintendo game that's trying to do real metal, trying to at least like include some chaotic, angry elements to it. I think it's cool that it exists, and it's a very interesting piece of music. It's not boring. It's just I don't think it quite works. So that's why I'm putting it kind of in the middle between the highs and the lows here. Now or Never, I think this is probably the single most important piece of music in the Splatoon series. That's a strong claim, but I think that this piece of music in particular is so central to the experience of Turf War, which is the mode that most people play the most of, that it's the closest to background music being mechanically intrinsic to the game that you can come. Now or Never, first of all, is an alarm. It is a warning siren. It's the fire alarm going off like like you're about to run into the end of the game, like you need to be on high alert. This is an emergency. It's time to go, go, go. Like that sense of urgency that it gives the game just changes everything. It changes the way that you feel while you're playing. And that's one of the huge hooks of that game mode. I can't think of very many cases where video game music has been that powerful that I've played. Super, super well made piece of music. There's a video, actually two videos really, on this piece of music by a YouTuber called Scruffy that I highly, highly recommend going and watching. It is a great breakdown from someone who's actually a music theorist and can talk about it in more depth than I am. I mean, I could, but I don't have the length of the video to do that in. So, yeah, this one, untouched, top of the litter for sure. But next up, we have something that I am going to put up there with it, which is Shelfie. The Chirpy Chips in general, ABXY, is my favorite Splatoon band. So this is slight bias to me. I love my chiptune stuff. But Shelfie has a moment where it just opens up and you're in happy chiptune land. And you get to stay there for a little while, and it makes me happy every single time. Like, if a piece of music is going to make me happy every single time that I listen to it, even if I'm distracted by playing the game in the meantime, it's a really important piece of music to me, and that's why I put it in value add to the game of Splatoon. Split and Splat also is a phenomenal song. I don't think it has quite that same sort of effect on me, so I'm dropping it down one lower, but this is like one of the lowest that I'm going to put an ABXY song. So next up, we move on to another group here. High Tide Era has two songs that we're going to be looking at here. We've got Hooked and Sucker Punch. So Hooked is really cool. I like Hooked a lot. First of all, there's, music theory punning going on there, which does not escape me. The opening piano key mashing is such a great attention-getting add to it, especially since there's so little music, especially in Splatoon 1, that's piano-focused. So having that instrument in there and that unique timbre really kind of wakes you up. And then they really get into this cool, almost like jazz-inspired groove in the middle of it that is just a really good time to listen to. It's one that'll kind of make you bob your head a little bit. I don't think the whole song feels that way. I don't feel like every single part of it is like, yeah, this is an absolute banger. So I'm just going to put it here. where do I feel on this? Probably here. But still very solid. Sucker Punch is very similar in that it has this phenomenal bridge section in it that you forget is there, and then it comes up and you're like, oh wait, this is actually a really good song. I forgot that this was a really good song. The opening and the lead up to it doesn't feel like an awful lot, but when it gets there, it's like you're grooving a little bit. It's nice. We get into the Wet Floor section here. Wet Floor feels hard for me to judge correctly because I played a lot of Splatoon 2. Like, I've played like 5K hours of Splatoon 2. So I've heard these songs over and over and over again. I've heard them to death. More so than any of the other music. So when I hear them, I'm like, oh, that's just normal. That's just Splatoon music or something. And I have to remind myself, like, to listen to it as though it were the first time I'm hearing it, because that's the only way that I'm really going to be able to appreciate it. One nice thing about a lot of Splatoon music is that when you don't have to hear it in battle, you tend to be able to pick up more details, more of the voicings that are a little bit quieter in the mix that you don't maybe notice because something else is playing over the top of it. Low bits especially, like there's this whole bass solo in one of the Ink Theory songs that's just so insanely cool that you cannot typically hear while you're playing the game of Splatoon 2. And it's an absolute tragedy. I'll take another listen, and we'll go into all of the Wet Floor stuff. Incoming, I'm between great and good for. I think I'm going to bump it up to great just because my bias is going to be to put it lower because it feels overplayed to me. I really like the way that there are these melodic sections that kind of harken back to Splatack a little bit. I really like that motif of like dun-dun, 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 dun-dun. It sounds very Splatoon. It sounds very similar to Splatack. And it does a great job of towing the line between the old and the new, I think. So that's a fairly solid entry for them. So Rip Entry starts really strong. Like the guitar lick in the opening is like, oh, this is gonna be sick. And then it just immediately starts plotting. It just goes like boom, 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 boom. And like the drums aren't doing anything interesting. The background kind of harmony, I guess, is just coming from a synth going up and down. And the vocals aren't really melodic either. There's just not a lot to hold on to there. So I'm going to put this one down here. It's almost down into the something doesn't work super well part. Undertow is pretty underwhelming to me as well. It starts and it's like, this just feels like the most basic Splatoon battle music that I've ever heard. It has a very similar kind of breakdown to Rip Entry, which just makes it so that it doesn't feel particularly unique. That's probably going to go down there too. Don't Slip is a weird one for me because when I listen to it from like the perspective of a musician, a music theorist, it sounds kind of neat, and I would like to be in the room with them while they play it. I think that would be really enjoyable and interesting. When I hear it as battle music, I don't know if it's just because the mix is getting, overshadowed by other stuff and I only really hear the melody to it, that I can't hear quite as much nuance or something, but it sounds a lot less interesting in that form. So that's probably also going to go down here. I'll put it a little bit higher, but that's another one that I just kind of tune out in the middle of the game. It's like, it feels unfair to put it lower because like I do find it more interesting listening as just to it as an independent track, but it's designed to be battle music. That's what its purpose is. I think it's unfair to decide to treat this as a standalone piece of music when there are other pieces of music that I'm going to give extra credit for in later installments because of meta text, basically, because of what's happening around them, because of context, because of how they're used and what they're for. So given that I'm considering that aspect of it, it's probably going to go down there. And Dolphin Surge is another very similar story. Again, there's a lot of really interesting theory stuff that's happening here. Part of it is that like it doesn't sound novel to me anymore because I've listened to it thousands of times. Probably an actual number that I'm citing there, and not fabrication, not hyperbole. But the vocals don't particularly inspire me. It's again a lot of like, it sounds like Pearl rapping, but with a lot less conviction, I guess. They do have a lot more of those like catchy hooks in there, like we saw from Incoming, the da 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 da, and like those are fun, but again, it doesn't feel like there's that much that's interesting that's happening in the drums. Whatever is interesting that's happening in the rhythm section is difficult to hear over the melody, so it starts to feel kind of bland after a while. Now or Never by Wet Floor, it's very interesting to me. There's a lot to say that's good about it. It definitely feels like a cover, and I am pretty strict on covers. Cover songs are a way that new bands get their names out there because you were looking for the original song, but now when you searched for the original song, there showed up this picture of like a really attractive front person instead of, whatever grizzled 60s rock veteran would have been on the front instead. And you're like, oh, hey, cute person, click. And then you find the band and you're like, oh, well, this is a little bit disappointing because it's not the same song and they don't understand exactly what it is that made the first one good. I think there are some steps forward in Wet Floor's version and also some steps back from how Now or Never did it. For one thing, it feels less driving because the first rendition of Now or Never doesn't take as many breaks. It really keeps that energy going the whole way. And even when it gives you a little bit of a breather, it's like a very short one, so it doesn't even feel like one. It just contrasts so that the last sprint is even faster. So I like that aspect of the original. But this one does add some interesting additional vocals. I like the idea of something I haven't talked about with the Now or Never first one is that it feels like a very community-based experience from the way that music is composed. Like, in this Now or Never, you get like more of a chorus going. Like a lot of the other band members chime in, and it's almost like your teammates are cheering you on as the piece goes on. The first one, Now or Never, accomplished this, I felt, by having, the drums are just going nuts, and that pulse is very fast. But at times, they also pull out melodically and go halftime over the top of all of that energy. And it almost gives me this feeling of like parallax or of like a camera zooming out, where things are happening that are very fast and granular and specific. Like there are inklings, substrafing around and doing very specific mechanical things. But you can also take a bigger perspective on it all and like look top down at the ink being spread around the map, and just see generally who's winning, what the general strategy is. And more even than that, like especially in the Splatfest versions of it, you also get the sense that this is a global thing. That it's not just that this is the one battle that everyone's watching. It's that we're watching all of the battles. This is something that's playing in millions and millions of Splatoon matches. Probably billions, honestly. Wow. I just thought about that. But in any case, like, it's something that brings this community of, in this case, squids, and in our case, people, together. And so it gives us a second, even in the manic chaos of it all, to contemplate that this is something that we share with each other. So I like that aspect of both of these. For me, having heard this as many times as I did, and then hearing this, I was like, oh, wait, I get why this works now, and I feel like this works better. I feel that way also about the Squid Sisters version, which I don't think is on here. I think. Well, so there will be another section. Yeah, that's what the other section is. The other section is idle music. So I think that ends up in that category, and that will also be rated very highly. I'm going to go. I actually really like bottom feeders. I'm going to go here. Seafoam Shanty honestly might go one higher. So huge shout outs to the drummer for making Seafoam Shanty happen. Like, part of the way that this manages to be as wild as it is that the drummer is basically doing like these crazy metal drumming patterns to go very fast. The fiddles are definitely like a wild timbre to be hearing in Splatoon music. It's something you do not expect, and it is very novel, but like it also works because it just kind of gives you this sense of like a very rural American stereotypical kind of wildness. Like you're just like galloping down a hill on the back of a horse with no saddle, carrying a shotgun in one hand. Like, this is just a wild ride the whole way through. It doesn't let up, and there's always that drum beat driving you forward. I think that's great for Splatoon. It's not what I would have ever anticipated them putting in Splatoon, and that's part of why I'm so impressed that it works so well. I'm going to put it up there and put the other entries in great. I really like that band. It's not not my top favorite or anything, but it's definitely up there. It's probably at least top 5 for me. Okay, now speaking of my top 5, these are just going up here immediately. This is, first of all, an absolutely insanely good jazz combo on its own merits. The trumpet work is phenomenal. They've got some like real chops on the players behind all of this, and like I love the way that it's composed and how layered it is and how well they play off each other. But also, there's a kazoo. I can't not put it up that high. They worked a kazoo into a jazz combo, and it wasn't just a joke. It actually works. They're mad geniuses, absolutely insane. So up there for sure. One of the some of the best music that you'll have in any Splatoon game. Blitz It is also I'm gonna put it like way up here. This is my favorite Chirpy Chips song. The chiptune section in the middle of it, just I could hear that 100 times and it would still make me happy every time. So good. And I'm excited for every time it comes up in a match. Even if I'm paying attention to the match, it'll kick in and I'll be like, yeah, I'm playing that game right now. So, very, very good. Wave Prism is the lowest that I'm going to put anything by Chirpy Chips. It's probably my least favorite of their work. That's not to say I dislike it. It doesn't have the same warm, fuzzy feeling that I get when the chiptune stuff comes in. And I can't really speak too much to what that is, what it is about the harmony or the melody of it that is driving me to feel the way I do. I'm just going by the feel there. Okay, so now we get to Despair. Same kind of problem that I have with this that I had with Metallopod, which is that I really don't think low-pitched Inkling vocals work super well. They're kind of hard to pick out of the mix, for one thing. For another thing, it's hard to keep them within the vibe of Splatoon, but also just have, like, angry metal vocals or something like that. And so they just kind of end up sounding out of place, I think, is the way that I'll put it. Now, I do give them huge points for being as synth-heavy as they are and making that kind of the driving sound. I love the little bit of, like, edge and crunch, crackling, I don't know, to the synth sound there. Using words to describe timbres has never worked for me. I don't get what people mean when they say certain words, but so Seasick, I'm gonna put it probably in I kind of tune it out. It's on the high end of that tier, but that's where I'm at with it. Kinetosis is one that really suffers from being battle music. because there's a lot of cool stuff going on specifically in the bass line here that you just can't hear when you're playing it normally. So everything on the high end sounds really basic. It's just hard to feature a bass in a game where so much is happening in the in-game sound effects that you're really not going to hear it super well, because that stuff is going to take precedence in your mind and everything. You really need something that's going to punch through the rest of the noise if you're going to be able to hear it super well. And I don't think the bass really does here. And I, again, have the same problem with the vocals that I had with C6. This is getting down pretty low there. Okay. Chop Screwy is really, really cool. I don't think it's quite up at as high of a level as the other music, because some of it doesn't carry over super well in battle music, again with the all of the other sound effects raging around it and stuff. But I really love the orchestral strings that gets just a little bit of a taste of them that you get in the intro sequence. It gives it a much more, I think, grand scale of a feel. And then from there, with all those layers and the kind of simulated orchestra, the suggestion of an orchestra that's in your head, when it cuts down immediately to just a single vocalist, that's like a huge drop in the instrumentation. And from there, like, it's a really exciting transition from like the beginning to that section and then to what comes after it. So I think that's a really cool effect that they create with that piece. But Entropical is, I've got to put it up there above Blitz It. Not necessarily because it's like more my favorite, but because of the way that this got used in the trailer. This is probably the best Splatoon trailer that I think I've seen. That's a strong claim, but this is the only one that I still find myself going back and looking at, because it just set up that season so well. There was enough new stuff in it that was really exciting for everybody. The Booyah Bomb was there. Like, holy crap, that was where they introduced Booyah Bomb. That was so good. And so many new weapons that were very meta-defining. Like the Kensa Splatter Shot absolutely changed the game. So there was so much that got thrown in, and we were all excited for that. But also, then they just made it an anime opening. They just went and did that. And this piece of music fits that perfectly. Like, the slow build-up at the beginning, it's like, hey, something is really exciting. And we know that you're excited about it. So we're going to show it to you, but we're going to make you wait to see it. And the music absolutely has that kind of a slow build to it. And that is one of the works of art that Splatoon has made. I'm not super big on seaside tracks in general. After, the first little bit of like getting used to them, I was kind of over them. And I haven't played this game as much as I played Splatoon 2. So it's not like they've become overplayed anywhere near as quickly for me. They were never as novel or interesting to me as Splatoon 2 stuff was. Maybe that's because it's similar enough that Splatoon 2 spoiled it for me. So I don't know. Maybe that's not fair. But one of the stronger entries, I think, is their version of Splatack. I know that Splatack is coming when I'm playing because it's the only one that doesn't start loud. And you're like, wait, where's the music? Oh, wait, no, it's coming, and it's going to be a good one. And I always get excited for that. Another part of it is that this music was tied to the introduction of the game, just like the original Splatack was. It absolutely served that purpose. But the trailer and the way that it used this piece of music, the way that it took such a long time to build up to it, and then it gives you the Splatack that you know you're here for, like, it is one of the best promotional pieces of music that has been put in the game. So while, a lot of the rest of it, I'm probably going to put a lot lower, this one, I think, like, obviously Splatoon 3's announcement was more exciting than Season 4 of Splatoon 2. But I don't want to weight my enjoyment of the song just by the significance of what it was announcing. Because I think Entropical did the task in a more interesting, novel, artistic way than the Seaside version of Splatack did. But this is still very high praise because, like I said, Blitzit is probably like my favorite individually piece of Splatoon music. A level. Oh god, has it been scrolled down this entire video? It better not have been. So clickbait, I like the instrumentation. I'm not a huge fan of how little the piece changes as time goes on. Like, you've got this, and that is all that you're going to hear melodically until the bridge. There's really not any variation in that. It gets kind of repetitive, I think. And the bridge is sick. Like, I love the way that they switch up the... Not exactly the instrumentation, but... that part really carries you forward, but it's just kind of short. The bridge is always the best part of the song anyway, right? But everything else around it kind of falls a little bit short for me. So I'm probably going to put it... I'm going to put it here. I'll put it at the bottom of great. It's not bad, but... no, you know what? I'm going to put it back in good. That's where I feel. Headhammer is going to go in roughly the same place. It has a lot of the same problems, I think, that clickbait does, where it feels really repetitive melodically for a while. Like, they get these motifs, but then they just kind of hammer at the same thing over and over again. And it's only really when we get the bass actually changing chords in the... I don't know if it's the bridge section or what exactly it is. I haven't checked out what the form of this piece is, but it's only when the bass really starts changing chords that it feels interesting and like it's realizing its potential. But up until that point, it's just kind of hammering you with the same thing over and over, and it gets tiresome, especially when this is battle music and you're going to hear it a lot. Paint Scraper is definitely a step up in my book. I think I'll probably put it like here. Paint Scraper I like because they kind of go back. I feel like they finally figured out a way to make Splatoon music heavy, and it's really simple. They just don't have the vocals be the lead voicing. They let the guitars do the work of being aggressive and angry, and just like give them something that's not in like a major key, something that doesn't resolve. And let the guitars do the anger. I honestly think like the weakest part of this for me is the vocals, but since the vocals aren't a big part of the song, I think it works a lot better for me. And that midsection where they're singing is also just very chaotic because there's so many different layers of it, and that's exactly what it should be doing. It should be like crashing into a big chaotic mess, and that's kind of what it does. So that's definitely one of my favorites from that group. Triple Dip frustrates me because it feels like it's going somewhere. It's got this rumbling kind of like driving bass kind of sound, like dum dum dun 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 dun, like ooh, we're going somewhere, we're getting somewhere. And then when we get there, I'm just like, can we go back to the first part? That was more interesting to me. I don't like when it drops out into halftime. Like, I feel like if anything, if you're gonna get me interested in that kind of a rhythm, do something fast, do something really interesting harmonically. Don't just like go slower now. So I'm gonna drop that down to probably like the same kind of area as Metallopod, where it's like I like where they're trying to go with this, but it didn't end up actually working. So I don't want to drop it down. This category is never going to get used, is it? You know what? It's Splatoon music. It deserves to have a tier that I'm putting it above because that's where it is. So See Me Now. I don't know why all of a sudden we're getting front row because this is Splatoon 2 stuff, if I remember correctly. But this... there are parts of it that give me like a nostalgia to a specific kind of music from when I was younger, but the vocals immediately take me out of it. It has a lot of the problems that I think I had with like Despair, where The vocals sound difficult to parse and out of place, I guess. It's like, what am I supposed to take away from this? And then the build-up doesn't lead to enough of a place for me. I'm going to put it down under kinetosis there. It's not my thing. So Sandy Side Up is interesting because it has direct quotations from Now or Never. Um, da 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 da. So that, like, there's clearly, the inspiration that they're showing that it has from Squid Squad. I don't like, again, how they make the vocals such a major part of this. I like the music around it better, but just it's so vocal centric, and I don't like the voicing that they have for this, so it doesn't really work for me. Okay, Candy Coated Rocks is up there. Like, I'm not putting it above Shelfie. Am I putting it above Seafoam? Okay, probably not. Let's put it like here. This group is low-key one of the best that they've ever produced in Splatoon. Damp Socks absolutely goes off. Now, this is not my favorite Damp Socks song, and that one actually isn't on this list. So we'll have to just retroactively add it, and we'll go into that one at the end. But I love the vibe that they have, that, like... Because Pearl and Marina are established musicians. We know of them, right? And something that I feel very strongly about with music is that if the artist wants to play in a different style than their audience is used to, the audience should be open-minded and see what they're willing to put out, even if it's not the genre that they were expecting or hoping for. I feel like a lot of really great musical groups have found inspiration in different things over the years that, like, here's an example. Linkin Park started off very edgy, very angry. It was just very 90s. Very much like it always had an edge to it. With Chester as the lyricist and the mental health issues that he was just very openly working out through his lyrics. That was always going to be an aspect of the music, but they really softened up and made some more pop music as opposed to nu metal on later albums. And they were called sellouts for this. And honestly, I think that was also some of their best work. Like, I love both of those kinds of Linkin Park. I think that there were... Like Shadow of the Day is absolutely a great song, just so much as in the end. And I love it when a group is able to breathe like that, so that, like, they're not held down by the whims of their fans, that they have just enough detachment from what their fans want of them, that they're able to do something that's actually inspiring to them as artists. Like, I've been, tracking a number of different bands, and whenever they can pull off a stylistic shift and keep a lot of their fan base, then I'm like, yes, that's such a win for everybody. Because we get to get some new music that we hadn't, heard of before, but it is going to be similarly inspired and of a similar quality as what was produced before. Honestly, with Pearl and Marina taking this new gig, it almost feels like a maturation of what they were doing before. Like, this makes some of their old work look like, what's the Pearl song where she's just cussing all over the place? I know that's going to be in one of these. It's probably one of the Idol group sections, because this is battle music. Effin' dudes be effin' sleepin' or something like that. She does canonically swear, we just don't know what letter it starts with, so I'm making it up. This makes their previous work feel like that in some ways, and I have a high opinion of their previous work. So after all of that praise, I'm going to take Tentacle to the metal, and I'm only going to put it in great. I think that the piano hook is really fun. I think that the vocals, it feels a little bit less jazzy than the instrumentation and the accompaniment around it. Like, the watery vocal sounds, like you're stuck with it because it's Splatoon, but it feels a little bit out of place with my expectation of what this kind of music is going to sound like. So it might not be the best use of Pearl and Marina specifically, but it's still pretty fun. And definitely one of the better battle tunes, I think, of Splatoon 3. The Now or Never from Splatoon 3 is not my favorite. And I think there are a lot of things that it does well, and from a music theory standpoint, I should be putting it up here. Me personally, I'm going to drop it down one. One thing that I really like was the sense of urgency that the previous renditions of it created when you heard them at the very end of the match. And this just kind of sounds like another rock song. Like you're taking the one rock song that was already playing, because this is Splatoon 3 and that's their vibe, and you're replacing it with another one. You don't get that same kind of warning klaxon effect from the beginning because they syncopate the beginning. It's not like like when a fire alarm goes off, it might be like like there might be a rhythm to it, but it's going to be very, very regular and rigid. It's not going to be like swing time. It's not like dan 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 dan. No fire alarm is going to sound like that, right? And so the fact that they took rhythmic liberties with the opening of it by like taking away a beat and giving you like a little rhythmic gotcha there, like, oh, you were expecting it to be just like straight eighth notes, weren't you? Nope. Like it almost starts to sound like it's swinging it, and I don't like that part of it because it doesn't feel as urgent anymore. It sounds like we're still just, no, we're chilling, we're having a good time, we're just, switching up the music. Someone put another quarter in the jukebox. So I don't like that aspect of it. There are other the Now or Never from Splatoon 1 keeps the energy going. I feel like the Now or Never from Splatoon 3 is just at its loudest from the very beginning and doesn't really have anything to crescendo into. And so it feels it kind of, instead of like staying high energy the whole way through, it feels like it starts high energy and then you start to get tired and it tapers off a little bit just from your perception of it. So probably the least bit of a fan of that one. Okay, the ska stuff is gonna be controversial because ska itself is very controversial. Some people have had very bad experiences with ska musicians or something and have a chip on their shoulder. Some people just found it cool to hate on it for a long time. I myself am okay with ska. It's not 100% my thing, but also like I think it can be really neat sometimes, and I'm especially a fan of some of the more ska-inspired punk music. And so Ska Blam is very in your face with the ska. And it was, part of the announcement trailer. So they were going to, take the one with the most novelty, like, hey, we're doing ska now, and yell it at you. And I think that, like, the groove that it gets into after the here are our horns part is neat. But it feels a little bit too much like a novelty, and it kind of gets a little bit old. I can't feel the same way about it after I've heard it so many times. So I'm probably going to put it down here-ish, something like that. Three Horn Circus is, I think, my favorite of the three. I'm probably going to put it, like, up here-ish. It has the rhythmic vocabulary that I think I like the best out of the three. It's a lot more groovy, a lot more syncopated, a lot, like, quicker, which I think works really well. I want that kind of like fast-paced, like good dance music kind of feel to it. And Ska Blam, it starts out so slow that you're just like da 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 da. Okay, I can't dance to this. But Three Horn Circus, you can get into a little bit more. Rockabilly Blues feels like another like kind of novelty. It feels like you're taking this instrumentation and putting it into a music style, a rhythm style that it's not built for. I mean, it's rockabilly blues, right? And it's an interesting exploration, I think, but it doesn't entirely work for me. So I'm gonna keep it here or so. So there's my take on all the battle music. That was a long one. And so, as you can see, I was wise to break this up into parts. If you want to see the other parts, let me know. I think we'll probably do the idle music next after this one if we're going to do the next one. Because I think that's got a lot of the other music that you would hear during battles, so it feels like a fitting continuation of it. But I definitely want to talk about Salmon Run at some point. And the lobby music also has some really interesting stuff going on in it, like especially the stuff playing in the background in the lobby of Splatoon 3. That stuff's just like randomly really good, and you can barely hear it. And it's such a tragedy that such great work is so hard to actually notice. You really have to be going out and looking for it to find it. So, yeah, let me know what you guys thought, and maybe we'll see you in another one after this.